achieving perspective. You want some actual perspective on this? Well, a bit of it comes from the Kansas City-based writer Jason Whitlock, with whom I do not always agree, but who today said it so well that we may as well just quote or paraphrase from the end of his article. Our current gun culture, Whitlock wrote, ensures that more and more domestic disputes will end in the ultimate tragedy, and that more convenience store confrontations over loud music coming from a car will leave more teenage boys bloodied and dead. Handguns do not enhance our safety. They exacerbate our flaws, tempt us to escalate arguments, and bait us into embracing confrontation.
The right to bear arms has become one of the most controversial, unalienable human rights. Whether it's self-defense or bad intentions, the use of firearms has sparked an argument that has been prevalent over centuries in the United States. Throughout the last decade, several unpredictable massacres have led to a sense of insecurity throughout all of society and indecision in legislative branches. Should guns be taken away? Who should be able to own guns? Will we ever feel safe? These are the questions being asked after the Virginia Tech shooting, the massacres in Arizona, Wisconsin, Colorado, and Newtown. Although there has been constant controversy over gun control throughout the past decade, the argument has evolved over time to include psychological issues. During the antebellum era, African Americans were banned from purchasing and owning firearms. This was the first sign of prohibiting gun sales to any part of society. However, after the discrimination, 19th century state laws were using higher taxes on general firearm purchases in order to force all of society to shy away from the gun market. This imposition of taxes was one of the first signs of gun control among the United States that targeted everyone. About a century later, Lyndon B. Johnson passed the Gun Control Act of 1968 as a part of his Great Society. After the assassinations of several iconic figures in history like John and Robert Kennedy, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr., President Johnson took action to prevent crime by means of firearms. Among many clauses, this law states that any people who have been classified as a mental defective or committed to any mental institution cannot own a gun. The Gun Control Act of 1968 was one of the first major firearm control laws that mentioned the mentally ill. Currently, Democrats and Republicans have become split over the issue on gun control. Democrats are in favor of placing restrictions on purchasing and owning guns, while Republicans are against all restrictions. Although the two parties are conflicting over gun control, they have both included the topic of mental illness into their arguments. Their assumptions about the mentally ill and gun-related crime falsely accuses a fragment of society for crimes that do not involve them. Although I had the same opinion as the politicians that the mentally ill were the main contributors to gun violence, it is altered after extensive research. The facts about gun control and psychological issues invalidate the arguments made by the politicians. Here are some myths and facts about the two topics and how they relate. After several mass shootings and fatalities involving firearms, the majority of the shooters suffered from mental illnesses. According to Richard A. Friedman, a professor of clinical psychiatry, only about 4 to 6% of gun violence in the United States involves people with mental illness. Gun control laws prohibiting dangerous, mentally ill people from purchasing or owning a firearm will guarantee safety for the public against gun violence. After Congress enforced the National Instant Criminal Background Check system, only about half of the 50 states in this country submitted their mental health records necessary for the success of this system. The mentally ill are the most dangerous threat to society when owning a firearm. Alcoholics and drug addicts are 7 times more likely to become violent according to the National Institute of Mental Health. So what is my solution? We should separate the subject of mental health from gun control. Legislatures should create gun control laws targeted for the general public, not a characterized section of the public. In order to prevent violence among the mentally ill, we should focus on creating better methods of treatment and improve institutions through more funding. For my implementation portion of the project, I created pamphlets with the myths and facts and my solution and displayed 20 of the pamphlets in a local therapist's office in Reston. When I went back after about 4 days, 14 pamphlets remained in the display pocket and I did not receive any comments through the email address I included on the pamphlet. If I could change any part of my implementation project, I would have tried to volunteer for a mental institution if I had more time. However, I am glad I chose my topic and did the research in order to create the pamphlet on a relevant issue in the United States.